What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Underrated and Overlooked podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in, man. We are very excited, man. We got great new additions. If you guys haven't, go follow Score Atlanta on the Twitter, on the Instagram accounts. But we got new additions coming in. I'm hearing myself. There it is. Okay, sorry, y'all. I was hearing myself. All right. A little blunder on my end. My bad, guys. But yes, we got new additions coming in. So Max is going to basically be our Alabama insider, man. So we're going to bring him on the show pretty regularly now. He's going to give us the latest intel on the team as far as, spring practice goes, the recruiting circuit. So we'll have him doing that. And then Hayden is a real big fan of Georgia. So we'll have him doing on the Georgia's always news around the Bulldogs. So he will have the intel on that. So I think it's going to be a fun show, man, going forward. And Craig, how you feeling today before we start?
Feeling good. Love the topics today. Lots of big news, and certainly the recruiting has been off the charts.
Yes, it has. And speaking of recruiting, obviously we're going to talk about USC in a little bit, but Justice Terry flipping to USC, Isaiah Gibson officially committing to USC. What is your instant reaction?
When I look at this situation, Justice Terry going to USC, that's a good opportunity for Justice, but oh my gosh, for USC, first of all, getting a guy from Georgia, getting a guy to flip from Georgia, where they've had all their defensive linemen proven to go high in the draft and having tons of success. I think this is even more beneficial to the USC program if they can get him to stick and go there, just to have that big name defensive lineman, something they've been desperately missing. Um, he's the real deal. Their defense has been struggling. If they can start to build that side of the ball and get top prospects from Georgia, I think he's number 2 in the state. That's huge.
Yeah, 100% agree. Just as far as Terry, I mean, it's one of the best gets you can get at the defensive tackle spot. And you mentioned their defense has been a little bit of porous, and they've been struggling at that position. So when you get a guy like that, you feel pretty good. And it's a heck of a weekend. Eric Henderson, obviously one of the top defensive line coaches in the country. So obviously we'll talk about more about your seeing in just a little bit, but landing that guy, I mean, they definitely put it on this weekend. And I don't know if you've seen it, Craig. I seen one of the videos they have for Justice Terry. I mean, if a program does all that and puts you as a priority, and if you can, Craig, go check out the video. I believe it's on social media. It's like 40 seconds long. I mean, me being a recruit, I'm going to commit to your program as well. You showing me what you envision for myself and how you see me fit into your program. I mean, I'm going to commit to.
Yeah, I mean, it is their biggest missing ingredient. I mean, if you had the number 1 quarterback go to USC, okay, it's not really surprising. Top receivers, all sorts of stuff. But to get a guy that was going to go to Georgia is very predictable. I mean, we've seen it all the time. Oh, look at this 5-star beast on the defensive line go to UGA. They are getting him. NIL money aside, his value to go to that program and just change the identity of that side of the ball, I think it is invaluable. So whatever they're offering him and paying and celebrating him, it's worth it for him.
No doubt.
100%.
No doubt about it. And then what was your reaction to Isaiah Gibson also committing to USC? That one was a fellow surprise for me as well.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable week. And it was a tough week for Georgia. I know we'll get into it with Hayden, but you had Tay Harris flip go to Clemson. And then these two big defensive linemen from Georgia together on the same weekend going to USC. I think it's absolutely huge. You got Juju there too. So you look at the top, I think the top 8 recruits in our state right now are going to USC. That's never happened before.
No, it has not. So obviously, recruiting is a whole thing in itself, and sometimes you got to see guys commit early and they flip towards the end. But Gibson kind of surprised me. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I think that's a name that you could possibly see flip in the future. Only reason I say that is because I talked to him, y'all, and if you went to one of the major camps this past spring, he basically was talking a lot about Clemson, how high he was on Clemson, and he was wearing, peep this, Craig, when he's at the camp, he's wearing nothing but Georgia gear. So when I think about that and how high he was on NC State as well, and how he said he likes them as a program, those are my 3 that I could see him potentially flipping to. Obviously, we'll see. It was a great weekend for USC, which we'll talk about, but I think that's going to be an interesting story to follow if he can keep his recruitment, if USC can keep his recruitment there. But obviously, they must have blew him away as well.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see if both those guys stick it out.
Yep.
But yeah, it's 100%. I mean, USC last year, they're such a talented program. Who wouldn't want to play for them? And then It's just the biggest missing ingredient is just that physicality on the defensive side of the ball. If they can really build up that side and start producing, and just think of Justice Terry goes there, has a great career, goes first round in the draft. He's shown that they have the same ability to develop. It's a true home for him. It's a destination landing spot for a big time recruit on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's that important um, for getting them back on the right track.
No doubt. I think he is too. Both of them are. And like you said, the biggest thing is going to be, can they retain their recruitments? Obviously, a lot of teams are going to be heavy on them. And as you guys know, once you commit, that's almost like the recruiting heats up. So two
Man,
studs. Terry had over 15 sacks. Gibson had 17 sacks this past year, Craig. 55 pressures and hit 18.6 miles per hour in the catapult.
yeah, I mean, just a total beast. If you watch Justice Terry last year too, it's like him in the state championship game. He was playing so hard. He's the best player on the field. They're playing Bowden, a team they beat. I said it's a toss-up game. No fault of his. No fault of Manchester. They'll have a new coach this year, but what a motivation for him to flip. And yeah, I'm sure Georgia's still going to be aggressive. They're going to try to get him to stay, but the duty and responsibility and opportunity he would have to go to USC, prove himself, um, be all conference, be an All American. Georgia has put 5 defensive linemen in the first round, I think, in the last few years. USC has done 1. So he has that opportunity to really impact the program and leave a lasting impact.
No doubt about it. Well, we're going to leave that there. We had another big commitment this past weekend. Peachtree Ridge, Miles Abernathy committed to Liberty. Craig, what's your reaction to that? How do you think he fits into the program?
Well, Liberty's been killing it. We know with the Devin Henderson last year from
Yep.
Cass. I mean, that was he's an absolute stud. He can get it all done. But Miles Abernathy, you look at him last year in Peachtree Ridge, he got hurt the last game of the season against Duluth, 3 catches, 50 yards. And then their production really struggled. They beat Lambert, and then I think they fell to Mill Creek in the second round. They had a very young team, but he scored 12 touchdowns in 10 games against Norcross. It's the one game they lost in the regular season. 10 catches, 150 yards, 1 touchdown. This guy's a true playmaker. He's huge, 6'4", and when he was on the field, he's their best receiver by far. He's got sure hands. I pointed out yesterday, if you look at the North Gwinnett game, it was in October, it's cold. He's not even wearing gloves. What receiver is so confident they don't even wear gloves anymore? So Miles Abernathy's the real deal.
Yes, he is, and he received the offer from them in February. Preferred walk-on. I got a story that's coming out on him as well. He detailed a little bit about the Liberty recruitment. One thing I will say on the show that will be in the story is that actually his head coach, Matt Helmrich, as you know, Craig, very well, he was the former coach of Johns Creek, was there for 5 years, had 2 banner seasons, winning the region championships, 3 9-win seasons, including a 10-2 season as well. The coach that recruited him very hard, Coach Nate Hope, he actually played for Coach Helmrich in high school at Johns Creek. Final year, rushed for over 900 plus yards and 12 touchdowns. So it's kind of an interesting connection between those. And he said that was a reason why he felt really comfortable as well, and he could relate to him.
Yeah, and you got Roddy White hovering around that program. What an incredible receiver that is to kind of be a mentor for Miles. But I think Miles is poised for an absolutely massive senior season. He did it last year already. Literally scored a touchdown in every game. Not many players have done that, and they were playing tough competition. So I think the sky's the limit. Great for Liberty, but we'll see if he doesn't get a better offer later on.
He's a senior.
Yep.
Yep. So this is it. That's where he'll be going to school at Liberty. So can't wait to see what you do, man. It'll be really exciting.
He's locked in.
Yeah, he's locked in. Yeah,
Okay,
like
sweet.
he just graduated already.
Gotcha.
He'll be there for a senior. But yeah, that's what we got there. We're gonna leave it there.
That's huge. Congratulations to him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was off on a year, but no, he is. Yeah, couldn't be more impressed.
Yep.
Did his thing every single game last season.
No doubt. But we'll leave it there, Craig. One of your favorite segments, latest coaching
Yes.
changes, man. So many happened. I'll start with a few of them. I'll go with Stars Mill. It's one we've been talking about, Craig. So they hired within their staff. David Cooper is their new head coach. He spent 10 seasons with the program, was their DB coach as well. Has had a lot of success. He also was a coach at Sandy Creek when they won their 3 state championships. So what's your reaction to him landing
It's
there?
huge. So we'll talk about the other one too. So Stockbridge and Stars Mill both got the new coaches. Both are 3 times state champions. So that's huge just to have, because he won 3 at Sandy Creek. He's been at Stars Mill all those years, and I think it's a good fit to stay within the program. They had a great year last year. I think their only losses were, and this is a team that was 7-3 the year before and missed out on the playoffs. Then they end up winning the region. Thought it was one of the toughest regions in all of 4A with Troop, LaGrange, Trinity Christian, Whitewater. Just every single week was brutal. But Stars Mill, I have one funny story about them. So I had to deliver something down to Stars Mill, and I showed up right as the bell rung at like 3:20. And if you know anything about Peachtree City, it is legal for people to drive golf carts. So all the students at Stars Mill, all the juniors, all the seniors, they all have their own golf carts. And I got stuck in about 30 minutes of the craziest carpool traffic I've ever seen in my life. Just a parade of golf carts. So it's a great place. It's special. They've won state titles before, and I know he's happy to be there.
No doubt about it. I think it'll be an interesting program to follow. We know this the outstanding job Stars Mills has been with their quarterback Logan and what they've been able to do. So can't wait to see what they do this next year. They obviously got the talent.
100%. Last year, said they lost on a Hail Mary to Perry. They came out with a focus. They're always so good in all 3 phases, too. If you know anything about Stars Mill, they always have one of the best kickers in the state. They're up there with the Westminsters. Great soccer program, great baseball across the board. And so, yeah, I think it's a great hire for them. Smart decision, and getting someone that truly loves the program and is going to stick it out.
No doubt. And then the last one, Craig, react to Starbridge hiring their head coach, like you said, 3-time state champion as well. What does he kind of bring to that program? What can he do for the Tigers potentially?
Yeah, they knocked it out of the park. Coach Clark did a phenomenal job with Stockbridge. A longtime assistant takes over, leads them to the finals last year. Now they have a coach coming from Cedar Grove, where he won 3 state titles as the offensive coordinator. That is the one thing Stockbridge has been trying to do, bring that championship to the Tigers. Now you have a coach that has done it at the premier program, the most consistent, dominant program in the state these last, 6 or 7 seasons. And now you have them there. You know Stockbridge is going to have a championship or bust mentality, and I can't wait to see that offense.
Me neither. I can't wait to see what he does and what he can implement. We know last year had Jaden Duke Scott, who's a dynamic running back, but I think it's like you said, I think you're going to see a little bit of a mix. What's made Cedar Grove so great, the offense can run the ball with Bo Walker, and they also got an elite quarterback, a former elite quarterback in E.J. Colson. They can throw it to Devin Carter and things. So I can't wait to see the development of the receivers and to see the development of the running game and how he kind of meshes all that together.
Yeah, and I mean with Cedar Grove, their team's mentality to just show up week in and week out, doesn't matter who the opponent is, and also get better as the season goes on. I mean, no one does it like them. I mean, once Cedar Grove gets to the playoffs, just look at what they did last year. People were doubting them early on, and bam. I mean, they just ran away with it. Had some tough matchups, too. That Calvary Day game, that was not easy. There was no margin of error for them in that game, but they got it done. So I think he's going to bring incredible focus, confidence, and it's really good because that was a heartbreaking loss for them to Perry in the state championship. But now you have a coach that did win last year, and look what Cedar Grove did. They had a disappointment in the state finals the year before that. They responded to it, came back and won it. So I think, they knocked it out of the park.
No doubt about it. And we can't wait. Obviously, like I said, make sure you tune in every Tuesday at noon. We'll have the latest with coaching change. There have been a bunch of them. And obviously, stay tuned for Craig Show at noon on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But before we bring Hayden on, do you have any other news on the high school run that you've seen that you want to quickly hit on, Craig?
Oh, no. Let's get into it.
All right, man. So let's get into it. We're excited for this segment. So we're going to start with Hayden, and then we're going to bring on Max. Man, I think you guys will like this segment a lot. We're going to make it a regular here on the show. Without further ado, let's bring in on the Georgia Insider, Hayden Gilbert. What's going on, Hayden?
Hey guys.
What's up, man?
Not much. Just following a crazy weekend of recruiting for Georgia.
No doubt about it. It's been crazy. Look at that. But yes, so let's get into it. I want to ask you the hot button topic, Hayden. What is your reaction to Jared Curtis officially committing to the Georgia program 2026 class, #1 player in Tennessee? What's your reaction?
I mean, he's an amazing product. He fits very much into what Georgia's been recruiting lately at the quarterback position. He's similar in build to both Ryan Puglisi and Carson Beck in that 6'4", 215 to 230 quarterback. That's not extremely mobile, but somewhat mobile. He's probably the best quarterback Georgia's gotten since, at this point, Justin Fields. He's come from a small school in Tennessee and Nashville Christian. I think more than anything, it creates questions about who Georgia can get in the 2025 class as much as anything.
And I 100% agree with you, Hayden, and that's why we wanted to bring you on. Who do you think potentially lands in the Georgia program in the 2025 class? I mean, you got between Ryan Montgomery, you got Matt Zollers, and you got Juju Lewis, and that's been my hottest kind of topic as well. Like, who is going to go, and will that guy that goes, obviously they're going to want to compete, with the Jared Curtis, who, the guy's going to come in, who wants to compete the most?
It's hard to say. It all depends on mentality of who it is. If Juju Lewis then has the mentality of Ryan Puglisi when Dylan Raiola was committed, and I'm going to come and I'm going to compete because I'm the best. It very well could be Juju Lewis or Matt Zollers or Ryan Montgomery, or you could see Georgia take someone that's a little lower on that list of low 4-star, 3-star, which they've had success in. That both Carson Beck was a mid to low 3-star, and Stetson Bennett was a walk-on. So it's just hard to say at this point.
No doubt. Do you think this changes Juju Lewis's recruitment at all with him, committing to Georgia very high on him? They could see him as a high priority target. Do you think that, changes his recruitment at all?
It may. It all depends on how it was looked at when they were both in the 2026 for me. Some people have said that Jared Curtis may have been their #1 target in 2026, which would change the dynamic there, in that he was viewed as a better prospect than Juju Lewis when they were in the same class. If they were viewed as equal or Juju Lewis was better, then I could see Juju Lewis committing to Georgia.
That's a good point. I'm gonna go with you.
I also think that Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson committing to USC may help him stay at USC, considering they're both from the state of Georgia.
Very true. And so, obviously, Carson Beck, Georgia has a great situation with him heading into this season. But you mentioned Stetson Bennett. You mentioned guys like Dylan Raiola not going to Georgia. So what do you think of the future of the quarterback position at Georgia right now? How important is it for them to start locking that in?
I really don't know. They've been really high on guys like Gunnar Stockton, who was a high 4-star commit, at one point a 5-star commit out of Raven County. Apparently they liked Ryan Puglisi just as much, if not more, than Dylan Raiola. They're very high on him. His ceiling is as high as anybody's. Just like he's a very similar prospect to Carson Beck coming out of Connecticut. A just really talented quarterback that at this point still really raw. So I think this year we'll see, depending on the development of Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi.
Okay, and then in terms of all right, so Georgia right now, I feel like their strategy, they want to protect the in-state prospects. It's great for the program to get guys that are from Georgia. They have that pride, but now it's a new landscape. They're more willing to get guys in the transfer portal. They're more willing to poach guys from other states. So do you think it's just an imperative for Georgia to continue to dominate the state of Georgia, or can they benefit from maybe letting USC poach some of their guys and then specifically going to surrounding states?
I think really the main point of modern day recruiting is just get the best guys you possibly can, no matter where they come from. Especially in the modern recruiting landscape, no matter where you come from, I mean, Georgia has done really well in both Florida, Texas, and California. While recruiting the state of Georgia is important because those guys are more likely to come because there is some loyalty there, I think just getting the best possible guys is the most important thing for the University of Georgia.
And then what do you think about just Kirby Smart this season? He's been a little outspoken on certain areas, but just in terms of how big he is as a main figure in college football, and what do you see from him this upcoming season?
I mean, he's probably at this point, if not the figurehead of college football, one of them, now that Nick Saban's retired. And you see, I mean, it makes sense. You see very similar opinions from both Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, considering that Kirby Smart was his protege and a guy that spent more than a decade underneath him while at LSU with the Dolphins and at Alabama. I think this year will be a good year. I don't think it's a pivotal year, but I think it's going to show a lot of what Georgia can be because this is the first year that not many of these players were on that or started on that 2022 national championship team. It's kind of a reset of those players from the University of Georgia.
That's right. And then saw some news recently. What's his name? The tight end that had to medically retire, whatever. But what do you see offensively from this year's team? Do you think it's going to look significantly different? How big is Carson Beck going to be? And do you see them taking advantage of the run game? Or do you think we'll see any difference with the offense this year?
I think you may see a little more of a run game. Last year, the running back position was extremely injured with Edwards and Milton missing meaningful time throughout the season. I think also, though, because there were so many injuries to players like Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey throughout the season, I think you'll see mostly the same group of guys in Dominique Lovett, Ra Thomas. You could see Arian Smith take another step forward. I think a lot of it's going to look very similar to what it did last year.
Then what do you think about Oscar Delp this season? Do you think he's going to take a big leap?
I do. Last year I'm not sure he's Brock Bowers because I'm not sure we've ever seen a player like Brock Bowers. But I think he could be a very, very good tight end and possibly one of the best tight ends in the country and one of the first tight ends taken off the board in next year's NFL draft.
Very interesting. Yeah, I want to see that position because it's been, man,
producing.
Yeah, you're right. But, yeah, I think he has a good opportunity. I mean, he really was a late bloomer on the scene in high school, really had a big senior season, and now he's stepping into a huge role. But in terms of the spring game coming up, do you think we'll see some of these stud freshmen that have arrived on campus? Do you think they will be able to outcompete and earn some of these spots?
I think some of them will. Let's see. I just want to blank on a few names.
Daniel Calhoun.
I think especially on the offensive line, there's so much raw talent there that I think you'll see some of them, especially some of the interior offensive linemen, get some meaningful playing time. A lot of those players, though, I mean, as you said yesterday on your show, I mean, they came in at 240, 280, nearly 300 pounds. I think they need a year or two to develop into really good offensive linemen. But I think you could see someone like KJ Bolden or Justice Williams play significant time early. Or Elias Robson, the top cornerback recruit in the country, considering Kamari Lassiter is now on his way to being a day 1 or 2 draft pick in the NFL.
It's a good point. And then I want to take it back to recruiting a little bit. I want to ask you, just out of those, obviously, I want to get your opinion first. Do you think that we could possibly see, we've seen it in 2021 with Mikael Williams, initially committed to USC, right, ends up flipping, coming back to Georgia. Do you think we could possibly see a flip with either Isaiah Gibson or potentially even Justice Terry?
I'm not sure about Justice Terry. In the interviews that he's given, he talked about how, I mean, we'd all know NIL played a factor, but also a allure of going to the big city from little 1A Manchester, how that played a huge impact on him. Isaiah Gibson from Warner Robins, making a little bigger city. Also, I mean, I think Clemson is in play there. I mean, his former teammate is 4-star Vic Burley. I mean, I got to see them in that state championship game against Ware County, and they were an amazing duo. And having someone on another team, I really believe, is a major impact on being able to put doubt in a player's head and possibly get him to flip and head up to Clemson.
No doubt. And then far as Georgia, right, I know the focus kind of goes to still trying to recruit Terry hard, but it goes to Elijah Griffin, who's probably the number 1, number 2 player, in the country, especially here in the state, number 1 player in the state. What's your thoughts on him, and who else do you think Georgia could be targeting at the defensive line position?
I mean, definitely Elijah Griffin. I mean, I think right now he is favored to go to Georgia. I think they are by far the favorite to get him. Besides him, I think they really need to look at some of the things and some more players, because, I mean, Isaiah Gibson, Justice Terry were 2 of their top lineman products they were really looking for in the state of Georgia. And until Saturday, I think it was expected that both of them would be heading to Georgia. I think Kevin Wynn out of Greene County is a possibility. I mean, he's more of an interior guy he's more going to be a defensive tackle or nose guard, but I think he's a really high-end product that could be going to Georgia.
No doubt. And then last one on recruiting, how would you rate? Obviously, it's still very early. Hayden, you're going to see a lot of commitments in April, May, June. It's going to heat up in the summer, obviously. But how would you just rate the overall class so far that Georgia's been able to kind of put together here early on in the recruiting cycle in 2025?
I think it's a very solid class. I mean, Elias Williams is a freak of nature at tight end, 6'7", 340 already coming out of high school. Then Jordan Porloy out of Buford is a great interior linebacker, outside linebacker in a 4-3 system, and can play sort of that Jalen Walker role that Georgia has right now. It's in a longer, faster outside linebacker. And then Bo Walker, I really like out of Cedar Grove. I think he has the ability to be a really, really good running back. I mean, throughout his career at Cedar Grove, he's been great. They play an ungodly schedule. He takes advantage of every team they play. I think he is a underrated prospect in this coming class.
Yeah, and Hayden, I agree with you with Justice Terry. I think he's got to be locked in for USC because he is that valuable for them. I feel like they're willing to pay him whatever. They're willing to give him an agent, everything. It's like, just stay here. I think it's going to be that competitive. But do you think there's any pressure on Georgia to try to land an Elijah Griffin soon now that we've seen these guys flip? Do you feel like there's pressure for them to be aggressive and try to show that they still have the next big guy going, who is actually the number 1 recruit in the state?
I mean, I think getting Elijah Griffin, there's pressure there to get him because, I mean, he's one of the best defensive linemen to come out of the state in a number of years. I'm not sure if soon matters. It just depends on how that recruiting staff feels about him and where they are in his recruitment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the timing is interesting. We've seen, like, if a guy will, like, flip or whatever, it's like there is, like, an urgency to get the narrative back on their favor. So I think Georgia might be aggressive in these coming days and weeks just after what happened with these recent flips.
I think it's important to get someone, but I think also the Georgia donors and all of their support around them understands that Georgia's been in the top 5 in recruiting throughout the entire Kirby Smart era. So I feel like it's very much they expect that Georgia will find someone else to replace him. And Georgia, when it comes to putting defensive linemen in the NFL, they put 4 in the last 2 drafts, and next year I expect that Michael Williams will be another one that's drafted in the first round. So I feel like most defensive linemen will be willing high-end defensive linemen will be willing to come to Georgia and be developed.
Yeah, how much faith and confidence do you have in Michael Williams this season, just to have that big year people have been really anticipating?
I think one of the problems with Georgia is Georgia runs is people that look at the box score and see that he may only have 3 or 4 sacks a season, but it's sort of that Trayvon Walker thing, and that he's ungodly talented and is making a huge impact, but is only playing 50% of the snaps because Georgia runs 20 guys on defense and 10 guys on that defensive front.
No,
so I think he could have a really big season, but I'm not sure any Georgia defensive lineman will ever have that 15 sack, 70 tackle season that you see out of a Chase Young or a Joey or Nick Bosa at Ohio State.
It's a good point.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, it's true. More like roles they kind of have. But Hayden, we appreciate you coming on, man, giving us some insight to Georgia. So that'll be your role, man, every week on the show, man. And we appreciate it, man. You were very insightful, and we can't wait to make your regularity, man, and get to know all about Georgia.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, and check out Hayden's stuff on scoreetail.com.
All right, there he goes, guys. So we appreciate it. I hope you guys like that segment. We got another segment coming up in just a little bit. That will be Alabama. Max is going to cover that and give us the latest on that program. That will be a lot of fun. But we appreciate Hayden. Go check out all his stuff on scoreetl.com. He's one of our better writers here at ScoreETL, and he's always has something coming out as well. But what's your reaction to Georgia? What do you think?
I think this year's spring game is going to be very exciting. And typical seasons, if Georgia comes up short of their goal, I don't know. It's like you are looking forward to the big games in regular season, but I feel like there's so many new faces and excitement. I think the fans are legitimately interested in seeing just what this year's team is going to look like. A lot of fresh faces, some movement around the coaching staff. I think it's going to be an exciting spring game. I'm definitely going to tune into it.
No doubt. I think it will be too, and obviously we'll have the intel here and react to it and what happens with the spring game with Georgia. But we're going to leave that there. That's all for Georgia, I think, today. And we're going to bring on our next guest, Alabama Insider for us, Max Waborski. I hope I didn't butcher that, but let's bring him on.
You're good.
What's going on, man?
How we doing?
Doing good. How
Thanks
about
for having
you?
me on, guys.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, Craig. You know it. There we go.
Trying to get you guys there. That's perfect. All right. So what's going on, Max? So I want you to talk a little bit about Alabama. We've been talking about it off the show, but I'm really impressed with your analysis and what you think. But talk just a little bit about what's your thoughts on just the linebacker room? I mean, you guys landed so many players: Abdul Sanders, Luke Metz, just got Daryl Duke Johnson. We'll go through obviously each one individually, but talk just a little bit about Luke Metz. Let's start with him.
Luke Metz. It'd be interesting to see where exactly he fits in Kane Womack's system. He's been playing inside linebacker, outside, even got some reps off the edge, I believe, this season for Mill Creek. But it'll just be interesting because it is a talented linebacker group as it stands with Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell, Jeremiah Alexander. And then off the edge, it's kind of hard replacing Dallas Turner. But, I mean, Keanu Coate and Quandarius Robinson aren't terrible consolation prizes. But it'll just be interesting to see where he fits in.
No doubt. And then what are your thoughts on, I mean, obviously I talked about my show last week and the outstanding job Kellen DuBois has been doing, but Daryl Duke Johnson, that's one of the best ones, man. Top linebacker in the country. I think he's high as number 3 at his position. What are your thoughts on them landing his services at the Crimson Tide?
You know, when DeBoer got hired, it was a lot of concern about just him recruiting, and not even just recruiting, but him recruiting in the South. And I think it's the past 6 or 7 recruits that he's landed were from either Georgia or Alabama. So he's starting to get a feel for it looks like, at least. And he's starting to get more comfortable in the system.
Yeah, he is. I mean, outstanding job there. And then another big one was Abdul Sanders. I mean, I looked up his stats, had an incredible season, 52 tackles, 3 forced fumbles, 8 TFLs, and 3.5 sacks. What are your thoughts on him?
And again, another one. It'd just be interesting to see where exactly he fits in. These guys are so talented from the start, and they're probably the best on their team in high school. But in meshing all that in and getting them to play as a defense, we'll just see where he ends up.
No doubt. All right, let's move to cornerback room. I think it's really interesting. We talked about it off air, but Pretty much one guy that is basically a starter that has some experience. Everybody else is a freshman, but we talked about it. I mean, so much talent. Xavier Brown.
Mhm.
You guys got some studs. What are your thoughts on the cornerback room so far?
It'll be definitely interesting just because, at least for me, in my experience playing for Alabama, it's been tough to remember a time where it's been one guy who's have at least some college experience in Damani Jackson, a USC transfer that Alabama was trying to get during his recruitment, but was able to land him in the transfer portal. 3 freshmen starting off the bat, most likely for Alabama. So including Jalen Mbakwe and Xavier Mincy and Xavier Brown. So it'll just be interesting to see who lines up where and who will start first. But between those 3 guys, very excited, especially those 3 freshmen, very excited to see where they end up and how they fit.
And then how good do you feel as a Bama fan knowing the experience that Kalen DeBoer has just far as the cornerback room, right? Had Jabbar Muhammad, who's not with him anymore, but he's at Oregon and seeing the success he had. And then before that, Trent McDuffie and then him going to the NFL level, becoming an all-pro. Like, how much confidence does that give you as a fan and as an insider, just seeing what he's been able to do and the talent he's been able to produce and get it on to the next level?
Yeah, just like you said, Jabbar Muhammad, Will McDuffie, exactly. He's been able to produce, and then having Kane Womack with him, hopefully they'll be able to create some scary guys on the outside. Some guys you won't want to throw their way, for sure.
And then, Max, last year, what was the number one thing that you felt like Bama was missing when you just watched them? Was it consistency throughout the year? Was it that defensive edge? I mean, what's something that you felt like is the one thing that was holding them back last year?
It's a good question. Well, one thing off the bat, I could tell you that hopefully won't be a problem this year is the snaps. And that got kind of fixed at some point in the season. And then in that Rose Bowl, it was tough to watch with Seth McLaughlin and Jalen Milroe. But they got Parker Brailsford from Washington, who's been an All-American center. And then him to go along with Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts should make for a pretty scary interior offensive line. And then on the outside there's Miles McVay, Elijah Pritchett, and Caden Proctor just decided he would like to come back. So it'll be interesting to see where they all fit in. But I would say consistency of the snaps and making sure stuff's right from the jump, just before the plays even started. Because if there's no snap and there's a bad snap, then it's going to be hard to win football games consistently.
And then when Nick Saban announced he was done after the season, then you bring in this new regime. What was that timeline like for you to just kind of accept that you guys had this great run with Saban? Now you're entering this new era. Was it something that you were initially excited about, or how long did it take?
To be honest with you, Craig, I don't know if it's actually still set in yet that Nick Saban isn't the coach. I don't think it will set in until either A-Day or that first game against Western Kentucky when I see DeBoer on the sideline. Like, that will probably be it. But, I mean, it's just hard losing a guy like that, like Saban. I mean, that's, I guess, for me as an Alabama fan, that's all I've known so far. And to see someone new on that sideline, it will be interesting, but I'm very excited for the future of it.
For sure. And then, I mean, during the Saban era, you guys, there's no secret, you guys had a lot of different coordinators coming in, getting other jobs. I think some of it was because of the success, but other aspects, it's like Alabama was able to adapt throughout those years, bring in new offensive minds. So what do you think about this year's staff and just guys that are coming in from other conferences with success? I mean, do you feel like Alabama is going to still have that same brand?
I feel like even though Saban isn't the coach, I feel like this is one of their better staffs that they've had in a while. Just, I know it's new and I know it's still, we haven't seen any product on the field yet, but bringing over guys like Jamarcus Shepard and Nick Sheridan as the OC, those guys for the start on offense will be huge in developing receivers and making sure everybody's in the right spots and getting the schemes right to go along with DeBoer's offensive mind. I think that would be fantastic. But on the defensive end, you got Kane Womack coming in from South Alabama. You have coaches. It's like first, honestly, I've seen is head coaches like kind of going down to go, not going down because they're going to Alabama, but like moving their role and going to be like position coaches instead of remaining as head coaches. It's just interesting to see how many that's happened so far.
All right, and before Craig, I'm gonna let you keep going, but I want to get your reaction to this comment. Max, and see what you think. All right. So he says, so this is one of our supporters, Jimmy Cash. He says, I hope that I'm the first one to say this after Caleb Downs leaves. It will never be the same. Bama fans, you are on the clock. What's your reaction to that?
I don't think it's true. I don't think one player will define a whole program, as I hope people have seen throughout college football. But it is a new era of college football. I don't think Caleb Downs will make or break Alabama's season. As good as he was and as great of an impact he made his freshman year, I think Bama fans will be just fine, personally.
There you have it. I just want to get your reaction. Now I'm going to throw it back to you, Craig.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And so Najee was talking about what's the level of success or measure of success this year for Bama? What's a success? What's considered a failure? What is that for you? How many wins, or is it appearing in the SEC championship? How would you judge this year just in terms of that?
Well, it's kind of different, it's totally different just because I feel like this is a whole new landscape and a whole different game, at least college football. It is 12 teams, so you're not exactly sure. Like in the 4-team, like one loss, okay, 2 losses, you're out for good. Like that's not happening. You're not making the playoff. So it'll be interesting to see how many losses it takes for teams to get like eliminated completely, or how many wins it takes for like teams to actually get in. But for me, my prediction, I would say still double-digit wins. I would say it's still 10 wins, maybe the 2 losses. But I think the 2 losses I think it's still fine to still get in the playoff. I would still see them. I project them to be in the playoffs at least.
That'd be a success in my book.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we got another question, man. You are the hot topic right now, Max. So I want to say thanks so much, Brett, for tuning in. I know you very well. Great guy, man. Used to formerly work for us. So thank you for this comment and his question. He says, hey, fellas, 2022 Alabama grad here. Question for Max. We have seen DeBoer add a couple of Georgia recruits lately. How important do you think that is going forward? We have seen the success Saban had. What's your reaction?
I think it's a good question. I think it's important just because he's got to keep recruiting in the South. And for him to get comfortable with being down here and getting to know the players, and him still, even though it still feels like it was a long time ago, he did just get hired, and like maybe 2 months ago. But it's important because he's got to keep recruiting in the South and show everybody that Alabama is still Alabama. With or without Saban, as big of a loss that was, Alabama is still the standard, and I think DeBoer and his new staff will show that.
There you have it. I hope that answers your question, Brett. Appreciate the support, my guy. Definitely one of my close guys in the industry, man. So thanks so much for that. I'm going to throw it back to you, Max. What player, we've been talking about it off air, but what player has impressed you the most so far in this spring practice and training? I mean, you guys got some dudes out there. Tell me some guys that have caught your eye so far.
There's a couple. I would say the 3 freshman corners so far have been – I know there's been a lot of tape on them, but Jalen Mbakwe, Xavier Brown, and Zay Mincy are all looking to be at least somewhat first-round talent in the NFL. I know they're still freshmen and have not played a snap of college football yet, but I feel like they trust those guys for a reason, and that they feel comfortable going forward with 3 freshmen at corner, like because of their talent and because of what Womack and DeBoer know what they can do. But besides those 3, it's interesting. The wide receiver room, I'm really looking forward to see how that pans out.
Yeah,
because they already have guys in there they got Washington transfer Jeremy Bernard. They got guys that have been there like Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice, and then the addition of Ryan Williams too. So just see how those all mesh together and where everybody will play. But I think it should make for a pretty talented receiving corps with Jalen Milroe at quarterback.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I want to hit the QB room and then the wide receiver room. Let's hit the wide receiver room first. What are your thoughts on just Ryan Williams? What are you kind of projecting for him as a role in that offense year one? Do you think it could be, okay, we'll bring him along a little bit slowly first, let him develop, and then kind of be able to, take that big jump as we've seen with the Marvin Harris has come on, hitting the ground running and things like that. Do you foresee that for him? What do you think about him overall as a prospect and for the Alabama program?
Well, for him, I just think he is in the perfect spot because I think DeBoer knows how to utilize his weapons correctly. And I feel like once Ryan Williams gets more comfortable playing collegiate snaps, he will be used a lot more than people think, maybe in not even just the offensive game, but on the return end as well. But yeah, I think like this, has a very, very high ceiling. And I hope he's used all over the field everywhere because I think he should be.
No doubt. I know Craig got a great question for you. Coming up, I got one more. I just want to go back quick to the QB room. Tell me just a little bit about what do you think about Milroe, right? What do you think his ceiling is? He seemed like he improved as the season, wore on. Do you think he's under kind of a short leash under the new era with, Kalen DeBoer? How do you think that room is overall, and what do you foresee for kind of Jalen Milroe?
I feel like he's definitely still a guy. I feel like he's DeBoer's guy no matter what. I feel like under DeBoer is he helped at least Michael, not comparing Milroe and Penix, but he at least helped Penix develop his passing game and helped him create or become what he is now. So I don't see any reason as to why he couldn't help, not as if there was anything wrong with Milroe's passing game, just maybe like helping him in like the shorter and intermediate routes, because Milroe's deep ball is pretty effective. But I feel like with DeBoer's help, I feel like they'll iron out a few things and make it a real problem for defenses.
No doubt. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Craig.
it'd be nice to see him start from the beginning of the season. But I want to ask you about a guy that transferred in, could have had success anywhere, but that's LT Overton. He saw Alabama as a good spot for him. He's got experience. He came from the Aggies. What do you think his decision to come to Alabama signaled for the type of opportunity he thinks he's going to get?
I think it's huge just because, I mean, our defensive line now with Jaheim Otis, Tim Smith, and now the addition of LT, I feel like it's going to be huge. And then you have Tim Keenan as well. So it's a blend of guys who have been there, who know the program, and will welcome LT hopefully with open arms and insert him right in there and let him play immediately. I think he would make a huge impact early on.
Yeah, because I mean, I think he could have gone any destination. You mentioned some of this other depth, but I think he sees this as a real benefit to him, and
for sure,
certainly will be a key part of that rotation. But you talked about the receivers. How deep do you think that group's going to be this year? And then where do you see a guy like Caleb Odom fitting in, just an obvious threat that can play tight end, play receiver, and pretty much do it all?
So I feel like, and I could be so wrong by saying this, I feel like Alabama traditionally doesn't have like, the big body 6'5" receivers that are coming out and making like the jump ball catches and whatever. But I feel like Odom could be that kind of guy, like a red zone threat. Not even just a red zone threat, but you could split him in the slot, split him out wide. He's 6'5". He can go get it. He can go catch a ball like high, so I think he'll make a tremendous impact. It's just a matter of where he will line up on the field.
Yeah, that's so true. And I remember like some of the years where Alabama's offense was just killing it. You guys would have like 4 6'1" receivers. They're all pretty much the same size. So that can be very dangerous if they're all the same. But then if you have the big weapon or got a guy like Tyreek Hill in the NFL or last year with Walton having some guys that can just take the top off. I mean, how beneficial is that just to have a different blend of targets in this receiving core that can each bring a specific skill set?
For sure. And like you said, so I think it'll be a good blend of size and speed with, Jeremy Bernard's pretty fat, Ryan Williams, Jalen Hale, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law too. All these guys mostly known for their speed. And I just think Caleb Odom adds something different to that group, which is the size that they're not exactly missing, but it's just doesn't hurt to have.
Yeah, he's pretty much unguardable. There's some, if you're a quarterback, his catch radius and just how he can go up and get it, he is certainly going to play a big impact. But what stands out about this year's schedule? What opponent, maybe it's not a team you guys typically play, but that you really think is going to set the tone for the season?
Well, I think right off the bat, go to Wisconsin, third game of the season, and then the week after that, you welcome Kirby Smart and Georgia to town. So that will be a huge test early on. But then their other home games include South Carolina, Missouri, who's no easy game. I know I'm missing some off the top of my head, but away games, you have to go to Baton Rouge, which is always tough. Have to go to Tennessee, which they lost there 2 years ago, and looking for revenge on that. But, none of these games are easy, and especially with the new format and the new teams in the SEC. They also have to go to Oklahoma, the game before Auburn. And that game was usually like a cupcake game for something like just a simple game, just a tune-up. But now it's going to Norman before but that's before Auburn comes to Tuscaloosa though. So we'll just see how that ends up.
And then had another comment. Speaking of Auburn, another comment came in, says, "But will you beat Auburn though this year?"
I mean, I believe so. Auburn's got some good receivers on the outside. Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. Is that right? They'll have.
You're right.
It's just a matter of, for them, it's who will be throwing them the ball. Will it be? What's the quarterback they just got named? White. What's his last name? What's his first name? Walker White, I believe. And then they have Peyton Thorne still. It's just a matter of who's throwing them the ball. But I do believe Alabama would be Auburn. Hopefully not as scary as it was last year.
Yeah, it was pretty scary, but I think it's going to be an interesting game. It's always a great rivalry. Before we let our guy Max get out of here, get back to work, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask him, Craig?
Yeah, so I pulled up some of these way too early top 25s. It looks like they have Bama around the number 4 in this. Where do you feel like the Tide are going to open the season at in that initial ranking?
Preseason, I could see them being ranked in like the 4 to 7 range, just kind of like, okay, let's just see where they feel it out and see where they end up first with the new coach and new staff and everything. But I feel like once they get past the first couple of weeks, they'll be like, okay, nothing has changed, business as usual. Alabama is still Alabama. So we'll see how it ends up from there.
So you would put, well, I guess, where would you put Ohio State? Would you put them above Bama?
Yes.
I would probably put Ohio State preseason 1 or 2.
Yes.
No? Yeah, I would feel the same way. Preseason 1 or 2, just because of the roster they have, they're just dangerous, especially on offense. Dangerous. And then you have with them, and then it goes, I would say probably Georgia, and then, I don't know, Ole Miss can make some serious noise this year. On paper, their roster they have guys all over the field at every position.
It's always quarterback for them. I like Jackson Dart, but I feel like for Ole Miss, it's like, can they actually win? Like, the biggest thing with them, Max, is like, can they win a big game actually?
Right.
Like, they always are like butting in that territory. Like, Kiffin's doing a great job. They got a 10-win season, but can you go into Georgia and beat a Georgia? Can you go into Alabama and beat Alabama? Can you go into Baton Rouge and beat LSU? Can you win a home game actually against those teams too? I think that's the biggest question with Ole Miss.
I think they have Georgia at home.
Yeah,
they do, because last year on the road.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, but Jackson Dart coming back for this season, how huge do you think that is for him? And, are they a legit contender in the SEC?
I mean, I would say Jackson Dart is, if not, he's a top 3 quarterback in the SEC for sure. And having Trey Harris with him on the outside is huge, especially them both coming back together is a scary combination to have in the SEC. I don't think Alabama catches them on their schedule, but there will be a high-powered offense for Ole Miss. Definitely.
Certainly. And
then I think they also – Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, these rankings came out like literally as soon as the national championship, but they also have Oregon up there pretty high. So,
yeah.
I don't trust the quarterback.
But this one put Alabama above Ohio State, but I think a lot has happened. This probably came out before Saban left.
Most definitely. Well, Max, we appreciate you so much, man. Definitely going to be a regular show going forward, and appreciate all the comments. Brett, we're going to address your comment in just a second. But thanks, man. You're very insightful as well and giving us some intel on Bama, man. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, sir. All right. So there goes Max. All right, guys. So we're back. We got a comment actually specifically for you, Craig, before we move on to USC. Comment from Brett. He says, for Craig, your favorite Georgia prospect in 2025, not named Julian Lewis or Justice Terry?
Say Luke Nickel or Tay Harris.
Why those, if you can elaborate real quick?
One, I think Luke, he won the 7-day state title last year. He really showed true leadership and maturity, and he's been compared to the Jake Fromms. I think it's undeniable that he can get it done. What he did in the playoffs was heroic. And then with Tay Harris, I think he's going to have a KJ Bolden type impact season. He's going to do it all. He's going to be a guy like KJ. What did he do last year for Buford? Scored in 4 different phases. First player in Buford history to do it. So
crazy.
I think that's what Tay Harris is going to do this year, and he's going to try to get Cedartown a state title. So I love those two guys. I think they are locks. I think they're special. But Luke Nickel is legit. He's playing with a great receiving core, but he is able to spread the ball around, get his guys going, he manages the game very well. He can make the special throws. So I'm really impressed with those guys.
There you have it. Again, Brett, appreciate you. You hitting the comment section. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. You're liking the content today. I see so many people are tuning in, so we really appreciate y'all. Hope y'all like the new segment. We're gonna move on to USC and then wrap it up. And we'll address your comment in just a second as well, Jimmy. But let's move on to USC real quick. We're gonna pull up the graphics so you guys can see it via On3 recruits in sports. But we talked about Justice Terry. Obviously, we talked about Isaiah Gibson. But Craig, want to get your reaction to this. Let's see, I gotta go Hayes Foster real quick. All right, so these are the two guys they landed. We're gonna share the screen so you guys can see. All right, Craig. So let's react. They also landed Gus Cardova, defensive lineman, also committed to USC, 6'5", 255 from Austin, Texas. Chose the Trojans over Texas A&M in Oregon. A little bit about him. He had a pretty good season, 65 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 TFLs. What's your reaction?
There's a beast, 6'5", 255. So, no, this is important. And I think that USC, if you look at the NIL legislation that's been passing, I mean, USC's been like the Hollywood of this. They are putting serious resources around it. They're desperate to get ahead of the game. They're super competitive. And I think they're willing to make heavy investments this year and in the coming years to get ahead of the NIL game. There's agents surrounding that program. And I think they're going to be able to create such a strong pipeline that you're going to be a high schooler, you're going to commit to USC, and your NIL is going to come right away. And just think about the collective worth. If you end up getting these guys to stick it out, Juju Lewis, Justin Terry, those guys are going to be at the top of the country in terms of NIL value. And then just being teammates with them raises your social media, raises your value. So I think that's what they're doing. They're going all in.
Yes, they are. And this is the final one, Craig. This one caught my eye the most. 4-star safety Hilton Drake Stubbs committed to USC, 6'2", 190 from Jacksonville, Florida. Chose that over Florida, Miami, Florida State, top 70 recruit. The kid's a stud, man. I was watching his tape, Craig. I mean, he can absolutely play. Listen to this stat line. It's a 4-star on every single platform, ESPN, On3, 247 Rivals. Finished the season with 97 tackles at safety, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 6 interceptions. Kid is a stud.
I mean, that's what you want, a guy in the secondary that can come up and tackle. I mean, when you see, sometimes it's an indication that your defense isn't that good, but other times it's like, no, this guy in the secondary is the leader. So I think that's, I mean, they're getting that defense shored up.
Yes.
Young talent into the future. That's huge.
No doubt about it. So that is Auburn's weekend. That is USC's weekend. That's our thoughts. I mean, they absolutely nailed it. 4 commits in Sunday alone. They absolutely got it done. If they can keep these commits, I mean, you got to feel good. They moved projected all the way up to number 3 in On3's recruiting rankings. So that says a lot about what they've been able to do. And they're going to be interesting to watch going forward, especially if these guys stay there.
Yeah, and Hilton's brother is a DB at FSU. So they had to pull him away from family. So, they're really aggressive.
Very aggressive. So can't wait to watch that. And one more topic we'll hit for college before we move on to NFL. Had another great comment, and it leads us to our Colorado question. Jimmy says, is the playoffs a lofty goal for Colorado this coming season? What's your thoughts?
I mean, it is a lofty goal, but it still has to be the goal. I feel like it's year 2. They certainly had a lot of things to learn from last year, but that's got to be the goal. And you got the king of confidence leading the way.
Yes, you do. And I think it is. Obviously, it's a lofty goal. Definitely, Jimmy. But I think you got to double your wins from last year. You got 4 wins. You got to get in between that 8 to 9 range and see where the chips fall where they may. Because, like I said, Max was saying probably 2 losses, you're done. I don't necessarily think so. I think a 3-loss team could definitely get in. So if you can get to that 9 threshold window, double your wins, I think you got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it this year. It's like if you're sitting at 2 losses or even 3 late in the season, It's like anything can happen in these late games as long as you're, just have a couple blemishes on the record. I mean, you can be in the conversation and still have an opportunity. So they definitely need to make a bowl game. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to do that. But I wanted to ask you, this was not on our topics, but I seen this and want to get your thoughts. So Dion said basically he sees Travis or Shador, one of them going number 1 overall, other one going number 4, and said they could potentially pull an Eli of a certain NFL team. They don't like it, probably not go to actually be traded. What's your reaction to that? That was a hot one. I wanted to get your thoughts. What's your, because that opens up the whole floodgates because some kids will be thinking they can do that. And obviously Dion is different, 40 years of experience. There's a different ball game we're playing here. What's your thoughts to that?
I think it's awesome.
Mm.
So we haven't seen that. Man, that is bold.
Very.
Because if you even put that out there, I mean, football is a business. So some teams may be like, you know what? If it's going to be that way, we'll take someone else at number 1. But to still be number 1 and coming into it saying like, no, I'm only going to this team. Ooh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be different. Definitely sets a precedent. We haven't seen a lot. That last time that happened was 2004 with Eli.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think it's intriguing. Obviously, we are in the player empowerment movement now, especially when it comes to football. We didn't see it as much before. Obviously, you see a lot in the NBA. Has its perks, has its downsides, but I think it's intriguing. I don't think every player, guys, is going to be able to do this. I think it has to be a very special, elite talent type player. And I think Travis and obviously Shador gets a little bit of that because, Shador is very good. And then Travis is one of the best prospects that the NFL is going to see next year.
Yes. But I feel like in order to make that, you'd have to have a team you prefer, maybe.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We will see. That is the hot topic. Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. But that's Craig's reaction. That's my reaction. Before we move on, did you have any other topics in college you wanted to hit on?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Well, let's keep it rolling. We'll conclude the show with NFL, third segment of the show, and talk a little bit about what's going on with the draft and the banning of a very controversial tackle. But we'll start with J.J. McCarthy. So I wanted to bring it up. He's actually been projected to go to number 2 overall as well. I thought the Vikings kind of make sense. I thought it was a little high for him, but there's rumors and reports that Washington could take him number 2 overall.
Yeah, so he's obviously gone up a ton in these last weeks. He had a good combine. I think they measure how much velocity you have on the ball. I think he had the second fastest. And if you watched him play last year in the national championship, he is very good at those quick intermediate routes, the slants. He can put zip on the ball, and that was the strength of them. But they also were surrounded with such a talented offensive line, such a talented backfield all those years. So can he thrive in the NFL? Yes, but it's going to take a very specific type of system and offense around him. But I do like his ability to just make those quick throws, get the ball out of his hand quickly. I was definitely impressed with what I saw throughout the run to the national title. I think he is an NFL quarterback, but going at number 2, that's something no one expected. Max was talking about his odds, how much that's changed in the last couple of weeks. So something's going on where his stock is just rising through the roof. We'll see if it ends up playing out, because we've seen some in other years, a guy's stock will drop before the draft and then it doesn't end up happening that way. But number 2 overall would be very surprising, but I think Minnesota would be a decent spot for him.
I think Minnesota would be a great spot for him, especially with Kevin O'Connell as their offensive, obviously their head coach and offensive coordinator just well and calling plays. I think for me, I might get called out on it. I think Washington's a reach a little bit. Only reason I say that is because, like you said, I think he has to be in the right system, the right offense, the right type of program in order to be successful next level. I think he is a good QB prospect, but when you look at it, right, in Michigan, had a great running game. Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, right? Asked them to do certain things, but not a whole bunch of things. And I think when you get in those franchise quarterbacks, Craig, you want to make sure that they're in the right spot where they don't have to start early on. Washington, you're probably going to start early on. At least Minnesota, I mean, they have a quarterback. He might be able to come on a little bit later. Like he might start, week 4, week 5, week 6, potentially. So I think we have to be careful with that too. When we look at quarterbacks, sometimes some of them can thrive, Craig, early on starting. Sometimes they can kind of struggle, and that be the end. And I just think for Washington, I think Jaden Daniels is the better bet because he's been on that platform, he's been on that stage, won him a Heisman, played in obviously a prolific offense, and he carried the load every game. Craig, he had to carry the load for them, and I think that would fit better for maybe a Daniels because he's going to have to do that coming in. Now to carry the load for Washington. Early on with what they got, don't have the same defensive team. Probably gonna be more offensive laden than anything. So I think Jaden Daniels fits that just a little bit better in my opinion. But I do think he is definitely a first round pick. Jaden
Yeah, and obviously last year we saw quarterbacks dominating the draft like never before. So it's not surprising to see them just get picked right off the bat. But something's going on to have him jump overall in one day with those odds, because those odds change based on either betting patterns or some sort of inside knowledge. To go from plus 2,400 odds to 400 in a day, either tons of people are betting a month before the draft, or there's a serious legs to that story.
Yes, it is. So we'll see. Obviously, draft season's only a month away. We're wrapping up college basketball, Sweet 16, this upcoming weekend, and then Elite Eight. So it's going to be interesting to see. And once, obviously that's over, we pretty much shift our focus to the draft. So can't wait to see what happens. We talked about it last year, Craig, with CJ Stroud, the stories being written about him. And we were glad that Houston actually, took him number 2, and they seen the results. They made the playoffs for the first time in a long time, won the first round playoff game, beat Cleveland pretty good, and end up getting to a divisional round. And I'm sure it was a great experience for Coach D'Amico Ryans and for their quarterback, CJ Stroud. So sometimes, man, I think you got to I tell you all the time, Craig, they passed the test, man. They've won on the big stage. Those other little intangible things or other things that don't really matter, I think you have to kind of go with that,
Exactly. The film doesn't lie. And it always reminds me of Kevin Durant when he got drafted and they were talking about his bench press, how he couldn't bench press 185. And Barkley goes, basketball doesn't weigh 185 pounds. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, last year was crazy with CJ Stroud or some of these other quarterbacks that aren't going through all the specific tests. I know there's something about, I think, Daniel's physical or something like that. There's always those rumors swirling around, but I do expect quarterbacks to continue just going really high. We see the rookies step up. A lot of the old guys are out of the league now, and so it's fresh faces, and you can benefit from having 2 quarterbacks in that role throughout the season. And look at Pittsburgh. Who doesn't expect both those guys to play this year?
You'd be a fool not to. Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, we're going to see. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of quarterbacks. Can't wait to see how many go. If you had to throw out a number, figure how many you think go in the first round.
I think 4.
4. I think that's a good number. I'd say about 4 or 5. Yeah, it's a good number. All right, well, let's keep it moving rolling quick. Let's go to the hot button topic right now, and that is the NFL bans the hip drop tackle officially. Cannot make the tackle anymore. What's your reaction?
Well, I know people didn't even know what a hip drop tackle is. I'm sure football coaches don't even know what it is. I don't think it's taught. I think it's just a natural tackle you make when you're pursuing the ball carrier at a certain angle out of necessity. So let's say, and it usually happens when they get to the perimeter. Rarely do you see guys tackling head on. You get an angle, and this is a way to tackle them and then bring them to the ground so they don't get the extra yards. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
So now they're saying, and the language that I was showing you that came from Rich McKay, who's in charge of these decisions, he said it happens when you engage the defender, you pull them down, and then you unweight them, aka take them to the ground. So unweight them, I guess that's a nice way of like hugging them and bring to the ground. But what do you want them to do? Slam them to the ground, push them to the ground? I think we'll see a lot of flags.
Yep.
The refs aren't going to be too sure about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're doing it because they feel like it's going to protect the increase in like ACL injuries, but I just don't think that that's like an actual tackle.
No, I don't think it is. No, I think it does not happen that often either. I think it was 15 players that got hurt from it this past year. That's not a big sample size, you know. And at some point, like I'm not a fan of it, of bending the rule. At some point, we got to start implementing rules to help the defense. Offense already has so many rules in their favor, right? You get the roughing the passer. You can't hit a QB up here, right? You can't hit him low. You can only hit him from here to here, right? And then defensively, you know, you go look at the pass interference call, right? A lot of times, sometimes the defense is in great position, but then you know the receiver dives into them, and then they get the flag on the defense almost every time, or you can barely press them 5 yards in. So at some point, the players, and I've said this before, they play the game, right? So you know better than us what's like playing the game. So at some point, NFLPA, who objectified the rule, you got to say, okay, well, this is not beneficial for our players, right? You're the one out there, you're exerting your energy, you're going through the physical contact, and football is a physical contact sport, you know? And I think, obviously, I know the NFL, they want the offense to come, you know, more points. It's more exciting for the fans. But at some point, like you're going to see, I think you're going to see a lot of games, Craig, where the 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 linebacker or the safety going to be from behind, and they're going to just let them go and go score because it's going to be like it's not worth the 15-yard penalty, and you know eventually you know them getting in better territory. I just think it's harming the defensive side of the ball, and we don't have any rules, in my opinion, that really helps the defense.
Yeah, and it harms specific players. So
Yes.
let's imagine back to like Brian Urlacher or Ray Lewis. They are strong and big enough. Mostly, they're bigger than anyone touching the ball on offense. They can wrap the guy up and stand him up, drive him back, and maybe even get a whistle before they take him to the ground. If you're a 185-pound DB and you're trying to tackle a tight end in open field, some of these guys are in the league because they tackle this way. It's like that's
Yeah.
the only way to bring them down. So I think it's going to hurt smaller guys in situations where they're going to have to tackle a tight end or the bigger running backs. It's not going to hurt a linebacker trying to tackle a receiver.
No.
It's going to hurt the guys in the secondary that are having to bring down the big tight ends.
Yeah, and then it's like when you're behind, what you're gonna dive at his legs, and that's gonna be another rule. You can't dive at his legs. I mean, at that point, you're almost like, oh well, let's not play tackle anymore. What's the point? It's just like
Yeah.
you're not helping the defense, and I just feel like at some point the players got to stand up and be like, well, look, man, y'all got to start putting in some rules that's beneficial also for us because offensively, I know you want more points, but is this really helping our game? Like that's what you got to think about. Is this helping us move forward to what we want the NFL to be?
Yep. But I do want to stick to the fact that it is only going to hurt the players that are smaller than the guy with the ball because they're the ones that use this tackle. And this is well said. This account right here says, if you're in favor of the hip drop tackle being banned, you've definitely never been 175 pounds trying to get a 225-pound guy to the ground in the open field. I mean, it's tough. And that's how these DBs tackle. They're faster than them, so they get a good angle, they engage with them, and then bring them down quickly.
Yep.
So we'll see. I mean, there are so many different rules and flags, and we'll obviously get a glimpse of it in the preseason, I guess.
Yes, we will. So that's our thoughts. We're gonna leave that there. Our thoughts on the hip drop tackle. Kind of final topic. Got to get your reaction first to this, Craig. But Chiefs trade L'Jarius Sneed to the Titans, a 4-year, $76.4 million deal, $55 million guaranteed, $20 million signing bonus. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Titans are getting a great player. He was definitely one of the most underrated aspects of the Chiefs last season. I think it is going to impact the overall market for cornerbacks because they're sitting here saying, oh, he's 28 years old. That's a little too old to be investing in him, even though we like to reward our players. But they're willing to not get much for him. A guy that everyone saw get it done, lead them, shut down top receivers from opposing teams week in and week out. But they're basically saying there's a wealth of young cornerbacks. We feel like we can fill this void and not pay them and save the money. So I think the cornerback position is becoming a little less valued.
Yeah, I think you're right to some degree. I think it's less valued than what it was before. Some teams are willing to pay, some teams are not willing to pay. But I think it's still an important position because when you go back to it, Craig, like you said, you got to be able to Sometimes you're on the island. Sometimes you're not playing the zone, the cover threes, the cover fours. You got a one-on-one match a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", and be able to win that matchup and kind of slow him down. So, especially with the prolific offenses, I don't know why it wouldn't be a position that you value, but you're right. It is getting devalued. I don't know how, because that's almost like your last line of defense, that and the safety. I think you're right. And we knew we had this conversation, Craig, on the show, that it was going to be difficult to keep Chris Jones and him. So I think it's tough. I can't wait to see who you guys draft and who's going to be next in line for the Chiefs as far as DB. Obviously, on the other side, you got Trent McDuffie, who's an all-pro, fantastic player. I'm sure guys are probably going to re-sign him. But I think for me, Craig, I think the Titans are one of the teams that have won the offseason. What they've been able to do, they got Chidobe Awuzie, right? Then you add L'Jarius Sneed, who's really, really good. Then you got Calvin Ridley. Some say they overpaid, but you pair him with a DeAndre Hopkins. You added Tony Pollard for cheaper than Derrick Henry. You added the tight end. You added offensive lineman. You also added Nick Folk. I think they've done a really good job under Brian Callahan, and I think they're going to be an exciting team to watch. I think it's going to be see what progression does Will Levis have in year 2 and what other pieces they can add in the draft. But I think they've done a pretty good job.
Certainly. No, Snead will be the real deal. We know what he can do. He can shut down the opposing receiver one. But I think with the Chiefs, the most valuable aspect of our defense is Spagnuolo. And having him in the playoffs, I feel like he is creative. He has great game plans. He studies the opponents very well. So bring back Chris Jones. We still have Spagnuolo. Got a little more breathing room with the salary cap. So we'll see. It's a tough loss, but it just makes sense. And if you're a cornerback, it's tough. If you're 28 years old, it is very unlikely you're going to get a 4-year deal.
Yes, it is. It is hard. But leave that there. I'll throw it to you, Craig. Any other big NFL topics you've seen that you wanted to hit on before we close?
Nope, just less than a month until the draft. It's going to be I think it's in Michigan or Detroit this year.
I think so. Yep, in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it'll be very fun, and I think more people are going to watch this year, probably than any other year. And you saw what all these guys did at the combine. I hope we see a bunch of trades. It's been a crazy offseason already, and it just feels like a lot of changes are happening throughout all 3 levels of football.
No doubt about it. We can't wait. We'll keep you guys covered and reacting to the latest NFL news. That's all we got for today. Thanks. Shout out to Max. Shout out to Hayden. Go to squaretail.com and get all your news. And if you're on the YouTube handle, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and watch Underrated and Overlooked every single Tuesday at noon. We always got some great topics and great guests on the show. That's all we got. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.